For years, Democrats have eyed impeachment cautiously, knowing that they need the public behind them if they're going to be successful. And right now, the public, at least by the polling, is not with them. A new Q poll, which was in the field as the Ukraine story broke, it's out today. It shows that only 37% support impeachment, 57% of the public opposed. But there is a huge partisan divide at play. 3 in 4 Democrats, they want impeachment. 95% of Republicans oppose it. Independents, they poll pretty close to the nation as a whole. And yet we have seen an avalanche of Democratic lawmakers now come out in support of impeachment in recent days, perhaps now forcing the issue, from the 7 swing state national security Dems, who published their op-ed on Monday, to close allies of Speaker Pelosi like Connecticut Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. Now, you also have swing district Dems across the region, all of whom backed impeachment yesterday. We spoke to a few of them. So how big a problem is public support for the Democrats? Ought it matter? And how should Democrats proceed from here? And for that, we turn to somebody who's probably the authority on this, Elizabeth Holtzman. She, former congresswoman from New York. She sat on the Judiciary Committee during Watergate, and she also penned this op-ed in today's New York Times. I voted to impeach Nixon. I'd do the same for Trump. First of all, Elizabeth, thank you very much for the time. And you say in there, this has a lot of the earmarks of Watergate. In fact, you said it feels almost like an echo chamber.
That's correct. I mean, unfortunately, what we saw in Watergate was the President of the United States using the powers of the presidency to advance a political agenda. And then we see the same thing here. Here you have the President of the United States calling the President of Ukraine and basically saying, I want you to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden's role in connection with the removal of a prosecutor in Ukraine. The president's not talking about corruption in Ukraine in general. He's talking about getting dirt on his political opponent. And if we connect that to the fact that the president also authorized the withholding of funds to Ukraine, we get a picture of a president coercing a foreign government, using the powers of the presidency, withholding monies that Congress has appropriated in order to get, quote unquote, dirt on his political opponent. It's unconscionable.
You know, it strikes me, to go back to the Watergate parallel, that unlike, people with a casual view of history, there was not this groundswell of Republican support when you guys started to go after one of their own in Richard Nixon. Moreover, the public wasn't overwhelmingly in support of the move as well. It was only through what you found through testimony that opinions changed. To that end, there seems to be a schism from a Democratic approach. Some say keep the thing narrowcast, keep it just to the idea of just this latest incident with Ukraine. Others are saying, well, the Mueller report didn't go as far as we thought it was. He stayed within a lane defined or at least perceived. This is an opportunity to now, through subpoenas, find more evidence. Which advice would you give to Democrats? Keep it in a consumable bite over what we already seemingly know with Ukraine, which is bad enough, or relitigate some of the things that we never got answers to for the past 3 years?
Well, I don't think you have to cover the entire waterfront, but it could be a mistake to limit an impeachment process solely to one egregious thing that a president has done. When we moved against and voted articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon, we did not just deal with the cover-up. We dealt with all the other huge abuses of power. We dealt with the illegal wiretaps. We dealt with the illegal enemies list and the audits of his political enemies. We dealt with the breaking into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. We dealt with a whole host of things. So it wasn't just one egregious abuse of power. It was a presidency run amok. And I'm not saying that the past is prologue, but that's the only impeachment process that ever was successful in removing a president of the United States. So people need to pay attention to it.
One more question, and it has to do with process. If we take the most recent example when Corey Lewandowski went before Congress and it turned into an absolute embarrassment, what a lot of people never saw was at the end of the day, when you had a professional attorney, if you will, doing the Q&A, there was it was much more effective. It was much more on point than the traditional 5 minutes a congressperson, some of them going grandstanding otherwise. What advice to the Speaker in terms of how this should work? I know we have the 6 different committees working right now, but at the end of the day, would you try and consolidate the questioning more into one professional, or is it going to be a free-for-all with all lawmakers with all different agendas?
Well, I think the best example here again comes from Watergate, where there was an investigation. There was a need to find the facts. The House Judiciary Committee didn't find the facts. We had facts from the grand jury, and we had facts from the Senate Watergate Committee. So the Senate Watergate Committee was the one that did the basic investigation. They're the ones who uncovered the fact of the White House tapes that did Nixon in. Now, how did they work? They had 7 people on that committee, 7 senators, and a staff. And some of those questions were vital and critical. Howard Baker came up with the very famous questions: what did the president know and when did he know it? He was a Republican. He was trying to help the president. But those questions turned out to elicit really important facts that showed actually the president knew a lot, and he knew it from the get-go. So you need to have, if we're going to have public questioning in an investigative kind of way, 41 people or 48 people in a committee is a very awkward way of doing it. And it didn't really work in the Corey Lewandowski situation. There ought to be small number of people and use the process that was used by the Senate Watergate Committee, which worked out very well, very coherent, very focused, and the American people got the story. That's where John Dean said, I told the president there was a cancer on the presidency. That came out in those hearings. So the process that's being used now is not one that we used on the House Judiciary Committee, but that was used in the Senate and was very effective.
Elizabeth Holtzman, Congresswoman, thank you so much. I appreciate the time and the perspective.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, when we come back, Nancy Pelosi, she's put the Democratic Party all in on impeachment, but the how on impeachment may be just as important as the why. So how should Democrats proceed from here? We're going to get into that straight ahead.